Pre-tournament favourites Brazil produced their most eye-catching display so far at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. The five-time champions produced a blistering first-half display to put away South Korea in the round of 16. Meanwhile, Croatia goalkeeper Dominik Livakovic joined an exclusive club earlier on Monday, becoming just the third man to save 3 penalties in a World Cup shootout. He performed his heroics as 2018 beaten finalists Croatia overcame Japan 3-1 on penalties, following a 1-1 regulation and extra-time draw to reach the last 8 at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Portugal's Ricardo against England in 2006 and another Croat, Daniel Subasic, against Denmark in 2018 are the only other goalkeepers to save 3 spot kicks in a penalty shootout in FIFA World Cup history. Let's look at the round of 16 matchups which began Saturday. So we saw the Netherlands beating the USA 3-1, Argentina beating the USA, well, beating Australia 2-1. Japan and Croatia, we told you, 1-1, 3-1 on penalties to the Croats. France beat Poland 3-1. England 3-0 better than Senegal. And moments ago, Brazil completing a 4-1 win over South Korea. Jamaica-born Nesta McGregor is working in Qatar as a sports correspondent for the BBC at the ongoing FIFA World Cup. Nesta hails from Linstead in St. Catherine and moved to England at 9 years old. He joins us now to talk about the big stories from the tournament thus far. Nesta, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. Good to have you. Good to be speaking to you. You're on mute. I think you're on mute. Are you? I think you're on mute. There you go now.
There you go. Yes, sorry. Well, that's my first mistake. The second one is every time people say I'm from Jamaica and I open my mouth, you could never tell. So thank you for having me.
Excellent, excellent. The obvious question to ask you, first of all, is about England and the whole issue of football coming home. Have the performances you've seen from the English team thus far, relative to the other teams still alive in the tournament, does it give you confidence that football indeed will be going home at the end of this tournament?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is just living in England, every single tournament is coming home. And we know since 1966 it hasn't. Obviously, Euro 2020 was as close as it come. England beaten by Italy on penalties in the final, remember. Going into this tournament, I think the performances in the Nations League and a couple of friendlies, the results weren't as good as people might have expected. So expectation coming into this tournament weren't as high as normal. The first game against Iran, 6-2, everyone thought, hold on, maybe it is coming home. But then we saw what happened against the USA, a 0-0 draw, so it looked like a step back. But then they, easily dispatched Wales, and as you just mentioned, in the last 16 as well, easily 3-0 win over Senegal. So one day it's coming home, the next day it's not coming home. At the minute, France are the defending champions and looking good. So it's going to be a tough quarter-final for England.
Yeah, it's the round of 16. All of the teams left are worthy of their place here, Nesta. So the question is, Brazil's first half display today against South Korea. We know people will say, well, it was only South Korea. But that first half performance was really something special. Was that the performance so far from this tournament to make other teams fearful? If you would agree that there was no performance before today's first half performance from Brazil that caused that team to separate itself from the others, to say, okay, everybody else, fear me.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm still in the press room at the 974 Stadium where that game took place. And having watched that second half, it looked like Brazil evolved. You know what people used to call samba football. What I would say, though, is that no team has looked invincible. Every team has had an off day. The Netherlands looked good. Like France, no defender in the world, world class or not, is going to want to come up against Kylian Mbappe. But Brazil did look good. But, Brazil lost their last group stage game against Tunisia, but they rested all their big names. So I think this was definitely a performance where people thought Brazil can attack, Brazil can score goals, the Brazil evolved. The difference has always been if Brazil come up against a good attacking side with good forwards, can their defence hold out? And can they play that cavalier, flamboyant football? Or are they able to also grind out a tough 1-0 result against one of the big boys if that's what they need to do? But the stadium here was rocking. Certainly the first half, it looked like Brazil took their foot off the gas for the second. But yeah, I think you're right. The world stood up, took notice. And I think Brazil, France, Netherlands, Argentina, all the favourites, England so far have gone through. So can Spain and Portugal do it tomorrow?
Yeah, you spoke about the stadium being rocking. Neymar, he returned and of course he picked up some goals today. So, how good was that for the Brazil team?
Yeah, I think, Neymar limped off in the first game with an ankle injury. There was talks, would he be returning to the tournament? He started tonight, and many people doubted how fit Neymar was, but just from watching him, he looks pretty fit. The ankle seems to have healed. He obviously scored that penalty. He also played most of the game, which surprised a few people, because I think perhaps if he was nursing an injury, he might have come off after half time because the game had been won. Neymar is now on 76 international goals for Brazil. He's only one behind the late, great Pelé, who was taken to hospital earlier this week. And I think the whole of Brazil, there's a large flag inside the stadium tonight saying, "Get well soon, Pelé, and we're doing this for you." So, if they've got that behind them and the support over here, then I'm sure that they can go all the way. And as you mentioned, Neymar's crucial to that if he is fit, and he's the Neymar of old as well.
Yeah, and as we're discussing individual players, Vinicius Jr., how brilliant is he for this Brazil side?
Yeah, I mean, I just said Brazil going forward are a scary. You look at their strikers, and even Rafinha, you look at Rodrigo, people who probably they can bring off the bench. Martinelli, Gabriel Jesus has gone home with an injury. The players they didn't pick, Roberto Firmino, Brazil have never been spoiled for attackers, and yeah, certainly Vini Jr. we see him doing week in, week out for Real Madrid, one of the rising stars of world football. Neymar, if teams focus too much on Neymar, as you mentioned, the damage can be done by so many other players. So yeah, Vini Jr. looked good today, but so did so many other of Brazil's attacking threats.
Yeah, one of the surprise packages of the tournament, Japan exited today, disappointingly for them on penalties. Your thoughts on how that one went?
Yeah, listen, I've been to see Japan 3 times in this tournament already. It's worth saying the team and their supporters have been, like a godsend to the tournament. Honestly, one of the best supporters teams, the loudest fans as well. And who could remember after the game, the fans cleaning up stadiums, also the team as well, cleaning up their dressing rooms. Listen, the Japanese Football Federation has high ambitions. They want to win the World Cup by 2050. That might seem like an impossible target, but you have to remember, they made it out of the group of Germany and Spain. They beat Germany 2-1 in their opening fixture. They beat Spain, which shocked everyone. So 1-1 today, we all know penalty shootouts is 50-50, you can go either way. So had Japan got through, who knows just how far they could have gone. But yeah, certainly a credit to the World Cup. And like I said, their fans will be missed because they have been some of the best behaved and the best supported fans that I've seen so far as well.
Yes, and remember back in 1998 when the Reggae Boys historically made the World Cup finals, they were drawn in the group with Croatia and Japan. So Japan and Croatia had met in that same group, and Croatia had won that game by 1-0. But over the period of cycles of World Cups, I think the Japanese have risen and have earned themselves a lot of respect in the past decade or two.
Yeah, and that's credit to, I guess, the J League and the amount of investment into Japanese football. We know that Japan has, big signing bonuses for often players from Brazil and other parts of the world. And what happens is when those players of Japanese origin, are training week in, week out with better players who play a different style of football, it benefits them. A lot of these Japanese players, play outside of the J League as well. They play in the Bundesliga, they play in the Premier League, they play in Scotland in the Premiership. So a lot of these players are getting good training in Japan, and when they make the moves, they go into places where they're developing their football. So when it comes to an international stage, it's not new to them. And if we look at a different example, maybe a team like Qatar, where all 11 domestically, you can see when they come up against international opposition that are more physical, more tactically aware, they do struggle. But I think Japanese football is in a very, very good place.
Yeah, hold it right there, Nesta. Stay where we're going to take a quick break and come right back and continue the discussion talking about the goal scores of the tournament. And it's certainly good to see Neymar get off the mark, and I'm anticipating the message that Pele will send to him when he breaks the great man's record. And I'm sure Pele has that message prepared and is waiting to deliver that to Neymar on the occasion of him sitting atop the throne as Brazil's greatest scorer of all time. More on the SportsMax Zone after these.